now have AI features and functionality that I have to, figure out how do I prompt it, how do I use it, what do I go for this, what do I go for that? Heaven forbid, you have if look at the terms of service of some of these pieces to it. I think the speaker that kicked off the day or was early in the session, just talked about, equity, security, compliance, democratic access. And I think the Copilot interface solves a lot of those problems. And we're seeing across the marketplace that's, it's really the Fortune 500 companies are really starting to galvanize around Microsoft 365 Copilot for very specific reasons. A lot of reasons that would reflect a direction the University of Louisville might want to go as well. But these are super exciting. They're logos, I know, but at some level, they're people. And the people that are employed here, these companies, which include a majority of employees in the United States, are able to access these tools. And these tools are the same tools available to your faculty, staff, and students. And I'm going to jump in, one or two more slides here, just making sure we're on the same page in terms of priorities of just being able to address, the consistent user interface. I think that is a growing concern for people like this group that's trying to create access and pathways to next generation tools. Second, integration into the tools you use every day. I'll show an example today of how you can connect Copilot to tools you already have in your environment. I think, being able to connect it to things like Panopto, connect it to things like your LMS, which I think is Blackboard, being able to connect it to your HR services and all your other systems of truth to make that tool even better and stronger. Being able to extend the platform to both SharePoint, OneDrive, but also third-party platforms as well. Like I mentioned, your LMS, your Panoptos, your ERPs, your SISs, all the acronyms, to be able to connect that to those sources makes this a truly, truly transformational tool. Privacy and compliance. I'm going to go through some specifics there because I think that is the first question we should all be asking is, if I use this tool, what is this tool using with my data? Not only is it like compliance and following regulations, and those regulations are still coming. A lot of state houses this session are trying to deal with that question, but more largely, like, is it ethical? Do I want my data or my students' data to be stored in a country that's, either not democratic or not respectful of my data and compliance? Do I want my data to be used to train models? And I think those questions should be the first question you ask, not the last one you ask after the kind of toothpaste is out of the tube. Fifth, being able to flex up, flex down. These resources cost a lot to run compute. Those costs are going down dramatically, which is super exciting, but also make sure we're using the right tool at the right price point to get the right job done. And then, as importantly, is the ROI question. How do we measure the impact and business value of these tools? How are we using it? What is the value being created, and how, which allows us to further go into the president's office, CFO's office, and saying, like, this is why this tool deserves more investment, because we can show ROI on it, and that's super exciting. And I'll highlight that as well today as we have time. When I showed that graphic before of vast majority of Fortune 500, vast majority of R1 institutions using Microsoft 365 Copilot, it's largely based and because of trust. And not just trust, that familiarity. I think Sherry had a nice comment of being a quote unquote Microsoft school, and that's awesome. And I don't want to just ask you all to trust our solution. I want you to validate it and make sure it's in the contract. And some of these things are implied in our contracts and explicitly stated in our agreements, which is really important that we secure your data at rest and in transit. It's encrypted. Your data is your data. A lot of people on this call, definitely in your community, have proprietary data that they do not want other people to be using, whether it's their research, student information, their personal information, all that stuff. I think that's like mission critical conversation to make sure you validate that before moving forward with your solutions. And then being able to like utilize this tool without being worried about AI security risks or copyright risks. Like you create something, maybe you mature your curriculum or your syllabus or whatever, being able to utilize that without being scared that you're taking someone else's intellectual property or anything like that. The copyright risks are implied in that, and that's how we can say Microsoft runs on trust. The AI adoption curve, these are just like big buckets to think of from a more strategic standpoint before I jump into some live demos. And I think I called it the faculty bot that I built over while I was eating lunch while the LinkedIn folks were going before. But access is super important to us, not just getting the first 5%, but the 95% of users that maybe are not using AI yet today, and using it not just a one-off, write a poem for Mother's Day sort of use cases, but actually to utilize it to either increase their productivity, save time, or be able to just be a more content faculty, staff, or employee. Second, being able to use these tools to prove out ROI. I think there's a lot of, in the last 18 months or so since ChatGPT came onto the scene, we have a lot of vanity projects we've ran. I know I ran them myself of like, can it do this? Cool, it can do that. But actually, like, what are problems we can solve today with a high degree of accuracy and a high degree of quickness? And then thirdly, and as importantly, governance. How do we deliver secure and compliant AI while managing all these agents that are in our environment? So I'm going to flip over to, I guess I'll flip over to I think it's sometimes it's easier just to show you how I roll. And so I'm just here in Teams. I'm going to start with Copilot and actually not your Copilot yet. We'll get there. Being able to start with what is available, what is free today. So Microsoft made announcements in the tidal wave of announcements recently, but this one was about 6 weeks or a month ago of getting democratic access to education institutions, including universities and academic medical centers, with the latest models, but surrounded with appropriate enterprise data protection. M365 Copilot is that solution. So this solution available today. If you don't have access to it, we'll have to talk to your IT to make sure everyone has access to it. It is under the hood. It is the latest ChatGPT model, being able to get that out to your end users. Really fantastic. We see some customers that have upwards of 95% of their faculty, staff, and students using this today. And that's super exciting and super humbling at the same time of the organic demand out there for the tool. So this has just access to a large language model and the internet as a data source. You see here, I had the option to toggle between work and web. Web is a free version. You can do pretty much anything you've asked of it. Something super simple, not just a Google 2.0 of the question I always ask it: how many people can fit in Dodger Stadium? So you can start with something like really factual. You could go and Google that, right? You can go Google. They're going to tell you it's got 56,000 fans in Dodger Stadium, which is exciting. Microsoft really believes in citing our sources. So these are called citations for us. That's unique to our platform to make sure you can both trust but verify what's going on in there. So that's pretty lightweight, easy, something you can Google. But something that you probably couldn't Google is how many elephants can fit into that stadium. So slightly silly, but just to get something that's interesting of how big an elephant is and how much it weighs, I guess, and how can you fit that into Dodger Stadium? So the answer here is about 5,600 elephants can fit inside that stadium. That's cool, but just to show that this is largely not just a declarative search agent or more convenient Google. It is really a reasoning agent. So being able to say, something like, can you graph how full the stadium is in steps of 10 elephants So not only can you just get a language response, you can also get a graphical interface in response to that. We see a lot of universities using this as a deploy to their students as a supporter. So, that's fairly decent, but I know this would take me much more than 3 seconds or whatever that took to get that graphic made in Excel or whatever your spreadsheet of choice is. So we can be able to graph it like that. And then as well, it's not just, graphs and language, it's also visuals. Create a visual of those. So again, so Copilot is not just, large language model. It's not just a way to visualize the data. You can also use it to create videos, images, whether you want to make that realistic or not. It's thinking about it. It takes a couple more seconds to build out that. So it goes and pulls not only from a large language model, but a visualization model, and as well a video model. If you ever want to be, if your lesson was this or whatever, something about graphing or statistics, you could also create a 2-minute video that you could use in a classroom to go through and just like talk through this as almost a intro to new material or pre-watch, pre-read before a course. So that's cool. Don't get me wrong. That's cool, interesting, neat, novel, you might even say. But where it's really interesting is when you start adding your enterprise data to this model, right? The models are kind of commodities at this point. There's the graph is still going up and to the right of large language models, their ability to do things, their ability to pass, PhD level courses, all that fun stuff. That's super exciting to have that in your pocket. But the real differentiator with large language models is what data does it have access to? And so when that comes to a place like U of L or any organization that is hyper aware and hyper compliant of how you're using your data, you want to make sure that data is wrapped in the enterprise security and compliance tools that the U.S. military uses, Walmart uses, Fortune 500 companies use, and that's the Microsoft security and compliance stack that your CISO and other people in IT have been working on for years, if not decades, to really make that first class. And we're really grateful for that work because it's going to allow us to enter the era of AI without having to worry about or make public service announcements in front of every class every time you're about to use a tool to say like, hey, I think the person said before, anything you put in the large language model, don't put anything in there unless you want it to be on the internet. And with Microsoft 365 Copilot, you don't have to make that public service announcement because we've kind of proactively helped your end users and helped your IT office in particular to make sure these are done in a secure and compliant way that it has respects to HIPAA, FERPA, and other regulations that you might have that you might think of. And there's thousands: PCI compliance, social security numbers, credit card numbers. All those things are able to be compliantly used here. So if I'm able to use my data, I can say this is a frequent one for me. My inbox is a mess. Can you help me prioritize the 10 tasks I need to complete before the end of the week? So that's thinking about it. So you think about this. I run a version of this a couple times a week. And that version of this is just able to help me get the priorities done. And so it's looking at a lot of things here, right? So it's looking at my emails. It's looking at some other citations from my meetings I've had this week, what's in my inbox, what's in my OneDrive, also what's in my Microsoft To Do, which is my tooling I use for my to-do list as well. And it's able to cite the sources of where it's coming from, which is super exciting way to help me help myself. And you can actually run this. You can schedule these prompts now to run it every day. So I think mine's probably not set up right now, but it has been set up in the past. You can do it like upwards of like 20 times in a row or something like that. It's not forever because that might cause some technical debt, but you can run it up to like a couple of weeks or maybe a month ahead of time. So you could have this, in your inbox every morning if you wanted to, saying like, here's my priorities for the day, or here's the most urgent projects I need to get done before the weekend, and I, dive into my couch and March Madness or go in person. So that's great. And so the Copilot does that for you. The next phase to this is being able to further specify what you want the agent to focus on. So for you all that are looking at my screen, you probably notice on the right, there's just some like random agents that I have built or colleagues have given to me or Microsoft has pinned for me, of being able to do things that are more specific, declarative, that's going to help with a specific business process. So this is my alma mater, but I'm helping with their AI transformation plan. Big thing for them is being able to increase access and equity for students. One of those key moments in a student's journey is registering for classes. We know if students don't get the right classes or they don't register, they're likely going to get behind and are at higher risk of dropping out. So they use Workday as their backend. You might have a different student information system that's either on-prem or in the cloud that can help. So I can be able to, ask this question. So imagine the night before, not U of L students, but students in my alma mater would probably do this. Of the night before, start thinking about what classes do I have to register for. Registration is open at 7 a.m. tomorrow. How do I do it? And being able to, from their cell phone mostly, but maybe in a big screen too, being able to first, really basic stuff, just with a couple websites that it's pulling from. It's able to, give me some guidance, maybe like an academic advisor would, of how do I prepare, plan, balance my credit load, financial aid, all that great stuff. Some key dates. And then really, and this is something that's just best practice that I stole from a school in the Big Ten, University of Iowa, of not just giving the student the information that they need, but pushing them and nudging them to utilize the resources they have. So for this school in particular, the registration office, has a number, email. You could put your booking or Calendly, whatever you use to schedule meetings. You can include that as well with it, which is super neat. And then as I was listening with one ear and trying to get lunch with my other hand, I had built a faculty assistant for U of L. And I just used a couple websites that you all had, so I can show you what it looks like under the hood. And again, this is Lincoln, not technical. I don't know if I ever could pass a computer science class at all, but I'm able to configure that agent, in 15 minutes or less, probably. Named assistant. There's a Copilot that can help me rate the faculty assistant. So the description I gave it to is help faculty members at U of L with FAQs, connect them to resources, events, and then if there's further support needed, here's the email that I want you to push them to. So further instructions, and then the knowledge sources. So the knowledge sources is like kind of the mind-blowing part of it, where it can just pull from websites you give it. That's cool. So Jerry, you probably recognize these website links, and hopefully people on the call as well. So I just included half a dozen or four here websites that I pulled. I think someone was sharing their screen before, so I used that website. You can also connect it to third-party data sources. So this is where, as it matures, you could even add, your LMS, Panopto, other tools that you could have. You could add images to it. In a short time, you'll be able to create videos from those sources. You can edit, add your kind of starter prompts. Those are, I think, like good scaffolding tools to help people use the agent. And then the agent's ready to go. That's all there is. There's not much more. It's like making brownies out of a box or something. It's pretty straightforward. And you can share that just with a link. So maybe you create a faculty assistant agent that you could then share with all faculty members. You can have IT pin that to people's Teams environments or share it more widely through an email or whatever. And you can also bring it to wherever wherever the end user might be. Maybe you embed it into your LMS or embed it in elsewhere. It's just a web link that has this, familiar, secure user interface that the end users might need. And I'm going to cancel that right now. I'm going to not update it just in case it wants to think about it harder, so I can just show you. So FAQ about AI. So maybe that's my start here. So common use cases, generative AI in education. If I went and asked Google that today, you're going to get a bunch of sponsored links. You're going to get a bunch of fluff, a bunch of probably contents written by AI now that's going to maybe be semi-useful, but not specific to you as a U of L faculty member. And I might have to jump into, oh, here it goes. So it's able to use those websites and those data sources I gave it to be able to stay on brand with what U of L wants their faculty members to be thinking about. And so those are common use cases. That's awesome. Being able to summarize what's going on. And I think from your website, you have maybe like 10 different upcoming events, some classes. I think there's like a 3-day workshop you all are offering. Are there upcoming workshops or ways for me to learn more? And let's see if we can do it. So right here, I see kind of a mistake here where I think in our, if you remember seeing our websites from before, this is more generic, I would say, of being able to pull from the internet, which is cool. So the way to alter that would just be to go back to my configuration here. And I think that my configuration, I think one thing I had in it that I should have done is of my knowledge sources to turn off web search. So let me see. Oh, no, I really broke it. I don't want to do that. So if I were to fiddle around with this a little bit more, I would want it to pull more from the Delphi Center specific websites. So I'd have to tinker with that a little bit to make sure those websites are prioritized. I'm not going to edit it right now. So that's something, not bad work for 15 minutes of just plugging around with this and being able to create, yet another front door for your faculty members to get into generative AI, into the programming and the resources you have already invested into. And really, it's limitless. So you think of every person has a co-pilot, and every business process has an agent. The agent can be for, students, it can be for faculty, it can be for employees. I even have been messing around with one where you can connect it to LinkedIn and say, how do I connect, hypothetical, I'm a business analyst, sophomore student, and I want to connect with U of L alumni that work in the Chicago area or something that I can maybe connect with for jobs and internships. You could use that too and use that powerful economic graph that Sam and Daniel were speaking of too in the last session to further democratize, make it more equitable for your students to get access to your really strong alumni base, to build those connective tissues so they can get those precious internships and entry-level jobs that we're all pushing our students to have. So I'm gonna pause here. I'm gonna take a peek at the any questions, or feel free to pull yourself mute as I transition to the next leg of the journey today. Anything in the chat, Sherry, that I missed? I think I'm gonna take silence as golden here.
Michelle, your mic is muted.
Oh, sorry, was there a question there?
Siva was letting me know my mic was muted. I said, let's give it just a second. Raise your hand if you have any questions as he's going over Copilot, because I know several units on campus have purchased the paid subscription for this AI tool. Anybody? Okay.
And awesome. And to clarify so far, like first thing I showed you, Copilot using the web, free. Use it, abuse it. I think it handles 50% of use cases that I've encountered with and really helps get a good foundation so everyone can have access to modern large language models in a secure and compliant way. So starting there, the agents that I showed you, they're priced based on usage. So usually it's like $1 or $2 per user per month from these use cases like employee self-service or IT help desk or faculty assistants or student tutors, whatever you want to build, which is awesome because I think that those point solutions are all going to cost you between $5 and $10 per user per month. So being able to get that at I think a more reasonable price point is helpful. And the premium solution that Sherry just mentioned of M365 Copilot is bringing Copilot into the productivity tools that, I think I have stats here if they're right. It's like 40,000 people at U of L use every month and 17,000 people at U of L Health use every month. And that is the, kind of premium experience where you have Copilot, and this is a demo account, so you're getting a couple pop-ups, but it's going to have this ingrained into your place of work. So you could do anything from having a first draft written. You could summarize the doc. You could flip it into a different language, whatever you want. I really use M365 Copilot a lot in PowerPoint and in Outlook. I think just being able to get my arms around my inbox is a job in itself some days, and being able to have it summarize information, be able to, this is from example I think is from IT administrator. So I could do, let's see if there's anything really nasty in here that I might use. So I can use Copilot both on the side here or in the tool itself to be able to look at people's calendars, schedule some time, help me write this email in response. You can set it up so it reflects your tone, your writing style. I'm someone, and Sherry probably knows this, I use a lot of emojis. So my writing style is a little bit more friendly, but I can crank up the professionalism too if needed. Had a funny story from a chief information security officer from a school in your area that told me on Friday, Copilot told him to maybe make the tone of his email a little bit more friendly, and he chose to ignore that because it was an urgent message. So you can always, it's a Copilot, right? It's not replacing you. Microsoft's philosophy, it needs to be augmenting human expertise, and so you can always tell the Copilot to step to the side and just wait for your turn, and I'll let you know if I want to help as well. So I think those are awesome things. And really, it doesn't stop there. Like it's
Lincoln, can I interrupt?
Oh yeah, please.
It was in the last Taste of Technology that I learned that individual units can choose to access Copilot for 365, but funds are limited across the university, so not a lot of units have done that. But I do want folks to understand that it is available for your unit. So if you have any questions about that, we'd be glad to tag team you up with one specific unit I know that has purchased access to that tool if your area is interested in that. So keep that in mind as you're moving forward, folks.
Yeah, and in that vein, this is new since last taste of technology, is being able to measure that ROI at scale. So, there's always gonna be the awesome stories. I can give you my favorites from other institutions of how they're using these tools and the results they're having. But what gets measured gets funded, and that's just the budgetary constraints we're in. So being able to see from both a department level or a organization level how you're using Copilot across its different flavors, whether it's the free version, whether it's just an agent, or the full M365 Copilot. I think the question you should ask, and your CFO is probably asking already, is what what value are we getting out of this? Like, how much time are we actually saving? What is the employee satisfaction of those that have Copilot versus those that don't? And I think Microsoft really smartly and strategically is proactively trying to answer those for you, so you don't have to have a whole, peer-reviewed research process to figure out the validity of these tools. And so we've introduced, and it's rolling out right now, might not be in your tenant yet, but rolling out the Copilot dashboard that's going to tell you, or if you have a leadership position in your department, how it's being used across your organization, or maybe how it's not being used, and opportunities for growth to help you all. And there's a lot of people in this call that are focused on adoption, to be able to say, like, you're using Copilot or this agent in these 3 ways, and these 2 ways you're not using it. Should we think of a way to do further training to address the spots where it's being underutilized? And so not only does it tell you, how many, I'll make this a little bit larger for those that have a small screen. You're able to, let's see what this quick video does. Shows just adoption of how it's being used across tools, work styles, organizations. I think it very usefully does. This shows my favorite thing, the intelligent recap. Oh, and it disappeared on me. Intelligent recap, which, once you have it, I feel like everyone feels this way. Once you have it, you're never going to get rid of it, right? The era of taking meeting notes, hopefully, is something our kids and our grandkids will look at us like color TV or something, where intelligent recap will do the notes for you, address the action items, summarize it kind of in a highlight reel of the meetings that you're in, or maybe you're just passively in, or you missed completely and you just want to watch the recap after. It's able to track all those things, and then getting more granular even of, I want this video to stop playing. It's going too fast. I want this video to stop autoplaying on me. But usage intensity of being able to say, like, oh, we have some people using it, infrequently, 1 to 5 times per month, or they're using it, in their daily work cycle, or maybe they're using it, every day, all day, which is something that you'll see the hockey stick level growth happen as people get more familiar with how these tools are used throughout their workday. I think that this is probably the most valuable part of the dashboard, is actually showing the assisted value. So it'll take from the Bureau of Labor Statistics the average cost of an employee, both from a compensation and benefits standpoint, and be able to say, this is how much value is being created due to the time savings or the productivity increases of those that have Copilot, which is just does so much help for kind of the people in this call that are probably a little bit more on the edge of innovation, of being able to say, like, we know it's creating this much value. Like, these are the statistics that support that. And that's super empowering, I think, to the end users trying to advocate your priorities over other budgetary options that your leadership is having to make right now, and being able to say, like, we're able to create this much value with this tool and it costs this much. So usually the ROI is something about for every dollar invested into AI, you're getting about $3.70 return on it. So like a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 ROI, which is awesome. And I think if someone was like, hey, Lincoln, every time you give me $1, I'll give you $4 back, I'll make that deal until my arm falls off. And I want to be able to support that at U of L. If you all have, I think it's up to, you need 50 people for this to turn on. But once you have 50 people using Copilot, these reports will start generating for those that have access to it. It goes down to just like how many emails, meetings, Teams chats are done. Again, with your really strong foundation of M365 usage, you all are just like in a prime position to utilize this, because another thing we sometimes forget about in the equity conversation is equity of capability. And for anyone, you know, faculty, staff, or student to already be using M365 and having these tools embedded into it just allows that adoption to be just an additional small step. It's already there where you're using, where 40,000 of your colleagues and your students are already at today, and you're able to just have that deployment ready. It's not a new tool, it's not a new platform. You don't need to spend 6 hours to know how to open up Outlook and look at an email, right? It's like something we do. Sometimes we do something, I'll put myself on blast. Something I do sometimes before I get out of bed in the morning, and the last thing I do before I go to bed is checking my emails. And having Copilot already there, hopefully already there. If it has to be there, it's bad work habit, but it's already there for me to be able to say that's already sitting there, and it's not this new platform you have to build or secure or deploy. I think really helps in the adoption piece to it. A couple other, I think, just like
a question here. It's a semantics question.
Oh yeah.
If a student uses U of L's Microsoft 365, but they decide they're going to purchase Copilot, it won't integrate with their U of L 365, will it?
No, yeah, no, it's if they purchase, I mean, if it's purchased for them, there's no way today for a student to self-purchase M365 Copilot through their school email. So that would be separate, and that's a security thing too, right? We don't want people bringing in third-party apps unless it's validated by your security office.
I just wanted to make sure that our audience recognize that we as faculty, staff, student, whoever, can't just go out there and purchase it and then it work with our Microsoft 365 here at U of L, because I think that was a common thought for a bit.
Yeah, no, we have some institutions in your area exploring this, and there's a particular institution that last spring we actually ran a research project with it, and once it's publicly available, you'll be first to get it, of showing the academic impact of having M365 Copilot. And I won't share tons of the details, but the growth that this institution saw in their research group, and it's their research, so it's theirs to publish and all that stuff. Microsoft was just the tool; we were not involved. But the growth that they saw was similar to the height difference between a 13-year-old and an 18-year-old. Like the coefficient, I believe it's p-value. The p-value of growth for those students in the research was the difference between a 13-year-old and an 18-year-old. So fairly significant and really promising, not just for kind of monetary value of time savings, productivity, but academic value of seeing growth in academic areas as well, which we're really excited about. And when it becomes available, we'll make sure it gets in your inboxes to support the evidence there. Last two things about this, it also goes into the agents. So if you're going to build an agent for, maybe a tutor agent or an employee self-service agent, or, there's hundreds of them now, budgetary agents, reimbursement agents, you want to understand when are the next payroll cycle, when is open enrollment, what is the next 3 assignments coming up in Blackboard for me. All those agents would be pulled. The telemetry from those will come back into the Copilot dashboard as well, so you can validate their uses, which is super exciting, and I think absolutely necessary on any of these investments to be able to start with the end in mind and be able to say, like, these are not vanity projects. I'm not just building these, using these tools for fun. They have to have some really positive ROI for us to justify their costs, both costs, monetary costs, training costs, user trust costs, and everything in between. So I think that's very exciting to be able to further explore to see which ones are working really well, maybe which ones are not, because you have to justify all these things. Really gets into the details here, being able to say, like, this example right here, I'll use my, see if I laser pointer. So this agent in this example is from a third party, right? So they point to the agent at SAP, which is the ERP in this example, and being able to say, for the employee experience type of bot, you can double click into it even further to truly measure your impact of it all. And then the control system, this is a little bit more IT centric, but being able to see who has access to it, how they're using it, what tools are being used, all that granularity that people should be asking about is awesome. So I'm gonna pause here for a moment. If I can, their PowerPoint's not letting me bounce out of it while the video is playing. There we go. See here if there's anything else we can do that might be useful. Lastly, and this is something that, probably is on the roadmap at U of L, I know it's on the roadmap of a lot of institutions, is that the role, called a bunch of things, but director of AI, person that is, kind of trying to, I don't know, Sherry, if this is your part-time job, that's probably just an additional full-time job right now at U of L, but seeing your AI adoption score. So being able to actually measure how adoption is going and saying, we did this training, how did it impact end user behavior? Or we built this agent for, let's say, student wellness is one of the agents we built recently and deployed at a Big Ten institution. Are students using both the mental health resources and physical health resources that they have at a higher rate? Are we getting telemetry showing that these tools are actually being used? And if they're not, why not? And being able to look at the data and say, like, what initiatives, what change management strategies are we using to better the adoption of these tools? And I think that's a key feedback loop where we don't have to wait, weeks and months to get that feedback. We can see from a day-to-day standpoint that this initiative yielded this result. And I think that's really empowering as you all, and I'm sure, generally, if you're not in that official role yet, in that role for your department or for the whole institution, of understanding, like, here's our initiative and here's the results that we have. And I think that's something that I have seen as, some campuses have one person, some have a team of people trying to hack away at this challenge of making sure that we're not just servicing the 5% of faculty, staff, and students that are already using AI, but we're really getting to that mass majority of people that might not be on Twitter every night or LinkedIn looking at the latest and greatest stuff coming out in the world of generative AI, but actually getting to the people that are just, coming to work or to school to get a specific job done. And how is AI being able to further that goal that person has, and really just get them into the systems and get them using the tools that you're investing into, building into. And I kind of geek out about that stuff. Maybe it's a bias that I have, but I think it's really important to have tracking of where your score is at, and being able to improve that score over time so you can better fulfill the promise that generative AI has today, and that potential is only increasing over time. So pausing here for any other, we got about 5 minutes left. I try to offer some more time for Q&A, but that's life as presenter sometimes. But what other questions, commentary, or things would you all like to see with our time remaining?
Does anybody have Copilot questions they'd like to ask Lincoln on how they can utilize that free version if your unit's not using the paid subscription? I really liked that, Lincoln, that you touched on the academic integrity of using it so that it's not learning from someone's intellectual property. That's important for our faculty to understand, I think. Yes. Can you tell me your name? I've got the League Pro. Allow that.
Do you have to unmute them? Oh,
I did.
oh, they might be muted. I know these webinars can be a little touchy.
Uh,
Hi, Sherry. This is Noor, actually. I'm under League Pro for my nonprofit's name. One question. You're talking about the free version. I have been actually getting into a lot of AI notebooks, Gemini, Claude. I'm researching, comparing all of them. And some of them are mentioning that using the free version is really making your data available. Because you're not paying for it, and whatever you're putting in is really used for training that particular either AI agent or the platform. So is that true for Copilot as well?
That's not true for Copilot. Yep, I think it's a great question though to start off. That's the right question. Starting with kind of a, I don't know, mama bear mentality of like protecting your end users and your community as being an early adopter in this. So, Microsoft made a choice really early on in this chapter to set up our responsible AI principles. And the one that you alluded to that I would speak critically of other platforms sometimes, and because I don't ethically think it's right, is your data is your data. We're not going to use your data to train models, or use it when someone else prompts something to get their data. I think there's a scary story out there. I think last summer, or maybe even the summer before that, there's a financial firm that was their end users. They didn't have control set up yet. We're not using Copilot. You can Google it. It's probably out there of the platform they're using, but they were taking people's financial information, throwing it into a large language model to build out financial planning plans. So, very interesting use case, but they learned quickly thereafter other people who are prompting something similar were getting that proprietary information from the other that was in their model from other users. And that's terrifying, right? To have your financial information out there. And once it's out there, there's no 1-800 number to call and say, hey, remove that data. It's their data. And if it's in their terms of service, then you have agreed to doing it. And I definitely lose sleep over security some nights. And I also don't read the terms of service of every application that I use. I don't think I'm alone in saying that. So it's really important for you all to use that, whether you're a nonprofit, U of L, or another institution in the community, to be clear of that. And I can say it happens to anyone. I was talking to a chief information security officer of a school in the SEC, and after the meeting notes were sent to my email. And I'm like, oh, that's a nice little feature. What service is that? And I found the service. It was in the fine print at the bottom of the email. I looked up the service. Interesting little, 5-person startup company that was just a wrapper around a large language model. And in their terms of service, they explicitly said, we're going to use your data to train our models. And we might use your data to sell advertisements to you in the future. And for a chief information security officer, someone whose job is dependent on security and compliance, even they can miss it. So I think starting with trusted partners in this journey is kind of a first step in all this. And I think there's a lot of awesome use cases, a lot of startup companies. My friends are part of some of them, and for them to create a moat or a use case for themselves, sometimes they are using your data to create these things, and Microsoft just doesn't believe in that. We run on trust. We've had decades long. I think we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year or this fall or something, and a large part of that is because of our historical trusted relationships with groups like University of Louisville, where we can make sure that our platform is secure and compliant. But you can also validate that with legal agreements that we have, and these tools are legally binding, to be able to say like your data is being stored in a safe place, the data is controllable, you can audit the data, you can look at it, and some other things, and even the coolest feature out there. Sometimes it's not in the Microsoft platform day one because it has to go through our own responsible AI principles. Things like, I'm not going to do it right now due to time, but if self-harm is a common one that pops up in higher ed, we would never want a student to be able to use a tool that was issued by the university that allowed them to think about hurting themselves or hurting someone else. And that's just an example that's out there. And even I've prompted it with interviews for future Microsoft employees, and it does have reservations even to using AI at this point for hiring purposes based upon bias or pre-existing things that are in the training sets. So being able to have a partner that you can trust and you can validate that trust with a legal agreement is something I would encourage you to think about.
Thank you, Lincoln. I think that was a thorough explanation of what's on everybody's mind, and that is the security. So I really love the graphic that you have here on the left on the slides. I think that really speaks highly of Microsoft. Does anybody have any closing questions?
And the last thing I'll leave you with is kind of what I started with too, is I know that this is simple and it's kind of marketing because it's super polished, but really, I'll get my laser pointer out again, or pen. So you think of, where's my pen go? Oh, there it is. Oh, ignore that little scribble. This persona, this person, it could be a faculty, staff, student, person in your organization if you're a nonprofit or different community group. This person might have access to an agent that's, your LMS agent and your student information system agent and your health and wellness agent, but they can access it through one interface. And I think that is, as we think about not what AI necessarily is today, but what it's going to be, and being able to say, like, how can we make sure what we're building today is going to allow us to grow even faster in the future? And as more and more use cases become commonplace with artificial intelligence, you really need an orchestrating layer that's going to increase the equity and accessibility of the tool. And I think I love this graphic, and I use it all the time just to illustrate that point, that having a familiar, consistent user experience throughout your workday, it's just so important to think about, because you're going to create digital speed bumps to people. And if you're super technical, maybe those speed bumps are just something you can just run over every day, and you can figure out how to use different, I think whoever said the League Pro, I missed her name, but being able to use 5 or 6 or 20 different AI things throughout your day, maybe that's no problem for you. But what I'm thinking of how you build these systems are really for that person who is like, okay, I can kind of get AI, I want to use it in a responsible way, get my job done faster or have a better student experience, what have you. But after a while, someone's going to see a speed bump and hit the brakes. And then you're like, you know what? I'd really love a course registration agent, but I'm not going to go learn another platform. And that creates inequity. And we might call it digital inequity, but it's inequity nonetheless. And I think being really mindful of how you're building these tools and your platform for your institution and the experiences for those that are within it is really important to think about. How do we set this up today to have a simple user experience, and then under the hood, as it becomes more mature, to have more and more agents behind it that can be controlled, can be deemed compliant, can be used in a way where it doesn't matter what the person is asking it. The agent can do the work of figuring out what data source, what is this person using, what is the result that they're trying to accomplish. And as the large language models become more powerful, I think you're only going to see more agents in the space that are going to try to address a point solution. There's probably a startup out there right now. It's, AI for tying your shoes. There's an AI for everything now, and be able to have that consistent space for that end user that's going to see a speed bump and they're going to hit the brakes. So I don't want anyone to waste time building out all these different, collection of agents, and the cost behind them is sometimes absurd. But being able to use something that is consistent, controllable, measurable, so we can grow together, and make sure there's not people being left behind, in this really exciting spot we're at and the innovation we're seeing. So that's a little bit of a soapbox, but I think looking at the vision and leadership of U of L, I think that's really aligned with what they're ideally trying to do, making sure like what we're building is going to be built for everyone to use it, not just people that are able to prioritize this call over March Madness.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you being here, and I think we've lost quite a bit of the attendance of probably watching the last few moments of the ball game. But we've got this all recorded, and folks will be able to watch it, Lincoln, as they find time. Siva will make sure we get it all spliced up and ready to go, and I'll make sure we get that to you as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll stop sharing. Well, there's anything else that you all want to build or see? I think, like I said, I'm two things. I'm a storyteller and educator, and I have a lot of interesting stories from institutions and what they're building, how they're using these tools, and also have a deep passion for building capacity of end users. So if your department or organization needs training or capacity building, that is something I love to do.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Lincoln, so much. It's been an amazing day. We have just a few moments left for the Taste of Technology. I think we've gotten nice bite-sized pieces from multiple areas today. And thank you for being here with us. If you're not signed up for our newsletter, would you please take the time to use your telephone and sign up for that? I believe Elena said she's going to make sure that she gets as much of the links that were in the chat today in our next newsletter, which would be wonderful. And then we have a survey from today. So we want to hear from you. What is it that you're looking for from Taste of Technology? What do you want to see us present on? We're hoping that the fall Taste of Technology will be in person. So we really want your thoughts. Please make sure that you take the survey. And I believe, Elena, can you drop that in the chat as well? Oh, thank you. And last but not least, and I'll drop this in the chat too, sherry.duffy@louisville.edu. Give me a call, give me a shout out on email. If you'd like to look at any of the content that we had and ways that we can embed micro-credentialing into your courses, I'd love to chat with you. That pretty much wraps us up today, folks. Thank you so much.